always did mine at one of the parks.
Good evening and welcome to the Monday, May 26th, Tuesday, May 26th, 2026 Maplewood City Council meeting. This is a new night due to the Memorial holiday. I hope you and your families all had a good Memorial weekend. I myself attended a memorial service at Sunset Memorial, and it was rather humbling honoring all of those that have given their lives in protection of our country. I went out to see my family's graves and saw my great-grandfather, my grandfather, and my father, all who have served in the military. They didn't, give their lives during their military service, but it was pretty humbling to see all of the graves and hear all the names read of those who have. So that is always something that I make sure to do on Memorial Day. And I hope everyone else had an opportunity to do something in that regard as well. Let us get started with the business of the city, and we'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Then could you do the roll call for us, please?
Councilmember Juniman?
Here.
Councilmember Villavicencio?
Here.
Councilmember Cave?
Here.
Mayor Abrams?
I'm here.
And Councilmember Lee is not with us tonight.
Thank you. Council members, would someone like to make a motion to approve our agenda
So
for
moved.
tonight?
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Juniman, the motion to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next, we move on to the approval of the May 11th, 2026 City Council Workshop Minutes. Is there a motion in that regard?
I move approval.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Villavicencio, the motion to approve the May 11th, 2026 City Council Workshop Minutes. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have our May 11th, 2026 City Council meeting minutes. Would someone like to make that motion?
I move approval.
Moved
Second.
by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the May 11th, 2026 City Council meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have appointments and presentations. Council calendar update, Mr. Sable.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Just a couple of items that are popping up on the agenda for next time. Number one, on June 8th, we're going to have our climate mitigation plan adoption. And then we also have a sale of our general obligation bond improvements. As I forecasted at our last meeting, we're going to add a special meeting for June 15th, which is an extra meeting. So I appreciate everybody's a little bit of extra work where we will do a really deep dive into the 2027 budget process. It's still the first half of the year, but it's the best time of year to start that the conversation. And so really look forward to having that be on there. And then the only other things I just want to note, we are, as staff, tentatively trying to put together as America celebrates its 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, we're, as staff, trying to find a way to do it. We don't have the 4th of July event, but we can still commemorate that. And so we're putting together a couple of options, probably at a park or at some kind of other piece. And then just as folks know, events in Maplewood are hopping and happening. And so Celebrate Summer will kick off officially July 8th at Afton Heights Park. And so that will be the first of, at this point, dozens of big community events that are going on in the community. And so, but we are moving ahead, and I think the next couple of meetings will be really informative and helpful. And so with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Sable? Okay, seeing none, then let us move on to our strategic plan update for the first quarter of 2026. Welcome, Ms. Knudsen.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Lois Knudsen. I'm the Senior Administrative Manager, and one of my tasks is overseeing the city's strategic plan. As you all know, the council adopted new strategic priorities in 2025 that were to be effective. We're calling it our 2026 through 2028 strategic plan. So that was approved. This is our first time reporting on the new plan. There were 2 months where we just didn't do any reporting as we were transitioning from the old plan to the new plan. There are many new performance measures in this plan, as well as several that have been carried over from our previous plan. Reporting took a little bit longer than I would have liked, but that's mostly because we have some new people doing some of the reporting, so I really wanted to make sure I was training them as best I could and preparing them for what I wanted them to do. I also met with almost all the departments to just kind of reevaluate, since this is our first time reporting on this plan. Who's doing what performance measures are you ready to go forward with, and are there some that we kind of are waiting a little bit on, since it's a 3-year plan. Okay. Our strategic plan progress snapshot. As you can see, we're at 24% progress. A reminder, as I've said over and over again when I report on this progress bar is driven by reporting on the action initiatives only, and that is the very lowest level of the plan. So even if people don't want to have an action initiative, I try to encourage them to. It's just little steps of how we're trying to achieve a performance measure. So we're at 24%, which is pretty good. As you can see, most of the measures are on track. There were just a few with some minor disruptions. And then there were 32 that are upcoming action initiatives. So those reflect into this 24% progress bar. But there's a lot of things coming that we're excited about. We just weren't ready to report on them or have them anything report right now. So we're moving forward with that. As we roll out through the year, you should see less and less of those upcoming, and more of those should be updated in actual live measures. And then you can see there are 3 that say they are completed. And this being a new plan, that may seem a little strange, but a lot of times those are things that are like the first step of getting something done, setting up funding for something, or setting up a measure to track something. So that's what those 3 are that are showing as completed. Okay, our first strategic priority is safety. And when council met last year, we described that as enhancing community well-being through proactive systems and infrastructure. And this is just a brief summary of kind of some of the highlights of where we're at right now. We maintain strong emergency response performance. One of the key measures there is the fire department has a goal of responding to incidents in 8 minutes or less, and their goal is 90%. Currently, they're at 92%, so they're doing really well on that. The next one, expanded community outreach and public safety education. Some of the things related to that, we switched vendors for the staff safety training, and that is resulting in a much more robust program. It's something we're able to kind of tailor to our own needs rather than the other one, which was pretty much canned and all the same. So that's been a success. And then both in police and fire are doing many outreach events to the community that are focused on safety, whether it's fire-related, just ways to get help, responding to fraud, things like that. So that is one of the other things that our public safety staff is doing. And then the third, continued infrastructure maintenance and technology upgrades. A big part of safety for the city, it's kind of a behind-the-scenes thing, is staying focused on our infrastructure, our buildings, and our technology. And if there were an emergency, are we prepared? What would we do? So a lot of those are ongoing measures or upcoming measures because they're new things that we're really trying to work on having a specific plan for. Sustainability, building long-term resilience and organizational strength. So sustainability does not just refer to our environment, although that is a huge part of it. It also includes things such as expanded employee wellness, safety, and workforce development initiatives. And the fire department has been a leader in this. They have an advanced comprehensive health, safety, and wellness initiatives that they've established just for their department. So those are in addition to the citywide measures we have. And that includes things as encouraging them to get, including the opportunity to get physicals and expanded mental health services. Continued organizational development and citywide training efforts. This includes such things as succession planning as we look ahead to how many people are possibly going to be retiring in the next year or two, as well as staff training. All staff, almost all, probably close to 100%, have gone through HPO training, high performance organization, and that was led by our city manager, Michael Sable. And that is kind of helping to prepare us to make decisions. If you're going to do something, let's have a plan. How are we going to work this out? What are different ways to approach it? So, and I've already seen it used in several ways. So it's been a good tool for all of us to have. And then advanced environmental sustainability initiatives. Those include such things as recycling programs, habitat restoration, and stormwater management. Now, based on our 2025 stats, the recycling collected monthly has continued to increase, while the trash collection is continuing to decrease. We reached a point a few years ago during COVID when those numbers switched. People were at home more, and they were having more trash, and they were recycling less. But that has turned around, and we're back on the right track for that. And then we also have our food scraps program, which is kind of a pilot program, but it seems to be doing well and being successful. And then we are continuing to focus on maintaining open spaces and preserves throughout the city. Our third strategic priority is development, and that's been identified as shaping a thriving, inclusive, and forward-looking community. Advanced redevelopment and affordable housing initiatives. Some examples of that are the EDA approving the use of LAHA funds for 2 Habitat for Humanity projects, and the revolving housing rehabilitation loan program that has been launched. Continued developer outreach and strategic land acquisition planning. Redevelopment sites throughout the city that could possibly be acquired have been identified, and staff continues working with developers and conducting site tours of those properties. Expanded outreach through events, surveys, and community partnerships. The Maplewood Living has featured articles about nonprofits, about 6 of those in the last few months. And then there was a volunteer expo that was recently held, and that was led by our management intern, Colin Vu. And that highlighted area organizations for volunteer opportunities, as well as an opportunity for the community to become aware of what services are available for them. Community engagement isn't one of our priorities, but it's an underlying theme throughout our plan. The police department held outreach events in the first quarter that reached over 1,800 residents. And not just residents of Maplewood, but of the surrounding area. And that number is just going to hugely expand throughout the summer months when we have so many more events coming up. Expanded culturally responsive engagement efforts. Increased use of multilingual communication and interpreters, and strengthened residents-driven outreach and relationship-building activities. So that's things like surveys after events, the budget engagement process that the finance department did last year. That will be continuing this year, I'm sure. Challenges and opportunities. Technology implementation and permitting delays, those are ongoing challenges we face. The need for expanded performance measurement and data tracking. So this is in many areas throughout. In addition to our strategic plan, just other measures, other things we do that we should be tracking and trying to get some data on so that we can make better decisions. Ongoing hazardous structure enforcement cases. Those are mostly related to rental licensing as well as the code enforcement department. Outreach evaluation and language access improvements are in progress. We are working with, again, doing surveys at events, other ways to reach out to people and engage. And then weather-related infrastructure maintenance impacts. In the first quarter, it was snow impacting things. We weren't able to trim as many trees, things like that, because we were dealing with snow. In the summer, it could be heat or air quality, as we have experienced in the past. Moving forward, we will finalize redevelopment agreements and strategic initiatives, continue to expand outreach and inclusion efforts, continue strengthening operational systems and data tools, and advance long-term financial and infrastructure planning. One of the things that's not on here is our dashboard. The dashboard for the strategic plan, the link to it got taken down because communications are redesigning our website, and when our plan was dormant for a little bit, they had taken it down. So I've done all the backhand work, and I'm working with them to get that live again in the next day or two. And then again, as we continue through each quarter, I want to continue meeting with the departments to modify and make changes to the things they are measuring. Maplewood continues to make steady progress towards achieving its strategic priorities through collaboration, innovation, and community-centered leadership. Are there any questions or comments?
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for providing this information to us. I know all the department heads, care about the diversity of the employees, but I was wondering if you could just let us know, how do you measure the diversity of the employees?
When employees are hired, part of their form, their application, is to fill out the background on what their diversity is. And this is just based racially, ethnically. It's not anything other than that we have any way of tracking, but that is where we get those numbers.
Anyone else? Councilmember Cave.
And Lois, isn't that also voluntary?
Yes, if
Okay.
they choose not to do
Yes.
it,
Yep.
they don't have to do it.
Thank you.
Even part of when we're inputting an employee into our software system to get paid and HR and all that, the benefits, there's an EEOC form we fill out, but we do the best of our ability to guess if they didn't fill it out, but we always check what they put, if they did fill it out.
Great job. Thank you.
I had a question about, I'm looking at page 35 of 336. It talks about staff beginning to inventory all major city assets and assigning replacement cycles. Is that, well, I've been on the council long enough to know that we have done asset management plans. We've looked at replacement cycles. So in terms of saying beginning to do that, it's not exactly, when I read that, I thought, well, we're not just beginning to do that. We've been doing that for some time, tracking our assets. So how do we interpret what it says here?
It probably should say continue, but Joe, do you have some comments on that?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, that's a very good suggestion. We should update that, and we will update that because we do look at all of our capital assets. We go through one department a year, one or two departments, depending on the size, and we take a look at each of those assets and do an inventory of everything. Part of this is that we need to update it with the current times because our old policy would say squad cars last 7 years, so we depreciate them over 7 years when really they're probably 3 to 5 years, so we need to take a new look at that. So I would agree with you, Mayor. We should update the verbiage on that.
Maybe that's a good word to use, is update. And, I mean, that's something that I just expect that we would continue to be doing, is updating that as we do replacements or, as things age out and, but it's more, when I looked at that, I just knew that isn't quite what we're doing. But thank you for that, for updating it the next time. We see you after the next quarter.
All right.
Mr. Taylor.
It just, this is my opportunity to thank Lois for, I know how difficult it is to try to wrangle 200 voices into one document and trying to make sure everybody gets it done on time. And so it is a ton of work and it is appreciated. And the other thing I will say is a lot of the things that you see in here are not glamorous things. It's just the hard work of just managing well. And Lois does that well, and she manages us really well in terms of getting this product done. But it's a cumbersome, complicated piece, but what I hope this does is it gives confidence to our residents that we're doing the work and we're showing what it looks like. And so this is just a measure of transparency that I think is important.
Thank you. I want to say thank you too, Lois, because I know this is not an easy thing to do. When we went to the new plan, safety, sustainability, and development, that means so much more than just those 3 words. And trying to translate that for staff, I imagine that has been challenging.
Yeah.
But from a citywide perspective, we're measuring what it is that we're doing, so that we know, are we on track? Do we need to make some modifications? Where are we having some difficulties? And without this type of a dashboard for us to look at, we wouldn't be headed in the right direction. And so I just want to thank you for that. But I imagine that it is challenging, especially to explain. We're down to 3 words basically, but there's so much more than just 3 words. So thank you. I know that this is, we really appreciate it. I know I do, and I imagine the council does as well. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you for your time.
Council members, we need to make a motion to approve the report. Would
I
someone like
move
to
the
make that?
strategic plan update on Q1 of 2026.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Villavicencio. The motion to accept the strategic plan report for the first quarter of 2026. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move consent agenda items G 1 through 5.
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Juniman, consent agenda items G1 through 5. Any further discussion? I'm going to bring up discussion. I'd like to pull number 4 and 5 because they really kind of go together, and talk about, have some more discussion rather than just be on the consent agenda. I know that I recall the first time we talked about Gladstone, we were in COVID, and I believe I was sitting at my dining room table running a city council meeting online. And so this has been going on for a very, very long time. And rather than just have it on the consent agenda, I'd like to have kind of an update on things, because this is a project that just has not, reached any, well, let me just say it this way, there hasn't been any movement that we can see, and we still have the Gladstone House that is pretty dilapidated on Frost Avenue. So can we have some discussion on that? But meanwhile, can we go back and we'll vote on G1 through 3? Is that, Mr. Beatty, can I do a friendly amendment to just vote on 1 through 3?
Yes, Madam Mayor, you can.
Okay, I'd make a friendly amendment to vote on G1 through 3. That way we can take care of that, and then we'll move on. Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded, and then friendly amendment G1 through 3. Any further discussion concerning consent agenda items G1 through 3? Then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. And we will go to discussion concerning 4 and 5. Ms. Parr, this is your topic tonight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This particular project, as you all know, we've talked about it many times. There's been a lot of moving parts over time that have made it a little complicated. I think anytime you have multiple partners from different state agencies, it becomes tricky. And everyone, I think, is after the same objective, which is quality, affordable housing with wraparound services in this case. But timing of when that's going to happen and what's needed within that time frame is what's really been the challenging part. And there's been a few hiccups along the way in regards to that, as well as historic needing to take a look at it from a historical context. That was one of the hiccups, as you maybe recall. They had to look at that further to make sure there was no historical significance there that made the building remain. One of the things that as a staff, we've been talking a lot with Beacon Interfaith about is the idea of wanting to get that structure removed. That's really been one of our biggest motivations. Obviously, we want the affordable quality housing as well, but that's been a huge motivation. The challenge is, once that structure is removed, in some cases, it takes away their ability to get the financing if it's done in advance of the financing being granted. So please know that that's part of the reason that structure has remained as long as it has, because some state agencies, once you remove it, it shows that you didn't really need the assistance for that aspect of it, and then that's taken off the table, which it clearly is needed in this case. One of the items before you this evening is specific to taking grants that were received by the city. In many cases, we are the applicant on behalf, and it's granted to us, and we're basically the conduit for it. And in some of those cases, we have the ability to convert those grants into deferred loans. Now, granted, it's quite a ways out, as you could see from in the staff report. However, at some point at the end of the term, that money comes back to the city, it's paid back, and then we're able to use that, future councils are able to use that in another way. So as a staff and in working with our attorney, we don't have any issues with that per se, but it still does complicate things because from a tax standpoint, from financing, it's preferred by Beacon. However, it has created some additional timeframe challenges. Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, DEED, they have and I know at the last meeting we talked about it, Ron had mentioned the end of June, as you could see in the staff report, they want to see this site activated, and they need to see movement happen by that time. We also know that Minnesota Housing, that's not their time frame. They're looking more to the beginning or mid-July, and we're not quite sure whether it's going to fall. We're trying to put a meeting together. However, in any case, tonight's action by the council allows those things to take place, those conversations, and if we can come to agreement on that time frame, then it will look good to move forward. This is what's left to be done prior to them getting a demo permit, which there's still the hope that will happen end of June, beginning of July. We do have Kevin Walker here, the VP of Development for Beacon. If you have any questions for him directly, you can ask those as well if you like.
Kevin, do you want to join us up at the microphone, please? And welcome to the council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, and I would just reinforce, we are so eager to get underway. I mean, it's like, what's the phrase, to God's ears? So we're very interested in moving ahead, and we're, I'll just say frustrated, except that's just to talk about the affordable housing environment, the complexity. There's federal rules, which in part Jeanette has alluded to, that, drives how we have to think about this from a risk perspective. We looked very carefully and closely months ago at trying to do an early demo. It's not in the cards. It represents too great of risk about just kind of upsetting the apple cart. And so we're kind of in this stuck place. We're exactly in that conversation Jeanette described, where we're really pushing Minnesota Housing to partner with us to move ahead, set a closing date so that we can start to really align the remaining work. I mean, it's such a short list of remaining items between us and closing. And so we're navigating this very actively right now with the closer and other folks at Minnesota Housing in partnership with DEED and the city. So and Ramsey County, right, and all the folks involved in the project. So that's, at some level, we're stuck by circumstances. We would love to move forward. We just need to do things in the right sequence so we don't put ourselves in a bad position and in a way that actually, defeats some of the purposes we have for this project. So that's what I can say.
Thank you. Councilmembers, any questions? Okay, then would someone like to make the motion concerning G, 4, and 5?
I move to approve the grant and loan agreements between the City Metropolitan Council and Gladstone Crossing Limited Partnership, and authorize mayor, city manager, and city attorney to complete and execute all required documents.
Second.
Is that just G4? Did you want to add G5 to that as well?
Oh, I thought I had to do it separately.
Mr. Beatty?
Madam Mayor, I would suggest that they be done separately.
Okay, so we'll do G4 first. Thank you. So moved by Juniman, seconded by Villavicencio. The recommended action contained in G4. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. And then on to G5. Would someone like to make that motion?
I move approval of G5. Do you want me to read it out?
No, that's okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Juniman. G5 as contained in our packet. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, and I am hopeful that this project can move forward. It's been kind of hanging out there for years, and I think it fits a very important piece in our affordable housing in Maplewood. I can imagine how frustrated you are, but thank you very much.
Thank you again for the city's support of this important project. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Moving on to unfinished business. This is the MCC YMCA discussion. Mr. Sable?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As I shared in an email to you all, the Minnesota legislature concluded its business last week, and unfortunately, there was a tax bill, but it did not include any provisions for a local sales tax for funding for redevelopment and reconstruction of the community center, and also did not include any pieces for the East Metro Public Safety Training Facility. And that puts us in a bit of a challenge. So we do know that there are a significant number of repairs that need to be made to the building to make it safe and habitable for the occupants. I'll just anecdotally note that there is still water that pools on the gym floor during rain. And so there is a desire to have, by our leased partner, the YMCA, to have that to be dry and safe space, and also know that there is still some uncertainty about the future funding for a new project. So we don't have any, I would not be willing to recommend a $48 million investment in the facility using excuse me, general fund dollars, and so it does require a different source of revenue to do some of those repairs, and so, excuse me. So what we have tried to do is to put forward a discussion for the city council is what are the steps that you would like us to take and to consider next, and so as part of our analysis, we've done a facility condition assessment report, which we've included the executive summary in this packet, and have previously put forward the entire summary of those items, and so you get a sense for the cost of repairs. The second component is that we've put the executive summary of what the appraisal of the land value is, so you know what that piece of property is worth in terms of an estimate of what you would get in the real estate market. And then you also could, in theory, just continue to operate it as it is with some minor repairs. And so, as part of the analysis, Mike Darrow and Joe Rube put together a really nice summary that included some potential future options for consideration. They are not enumerated, but I will give them numbers anyways. Number one is to continue to operate the existing facility with significant reinvestment. Number two, you could do a short-term interim operation of the facility, focusing on most critical operation and safety-related repairs. So this is what we call kind of a minor upkeep in piece. Item three is a total demolition and redevelopment of the site. That is clearly an option that's available to you. It would estimate that there would be some demolition costs for that. And then you could do an alternative, you could sort of get out of the business of owning that and potentially offer it and sell it to somebody else who could operate it, either for some other site. And so the purpose of this item is to just lay out a number of choices, and staff are prepared to sort of respond to questions. But this is really an opportunity for the council to say, we didn't get what we asked for from the legislature. There's a number of things we could do. All of them are suboptimal choices today. And so which of the less good options would you like to consider going forward? And I think this is an appropriate time to just sort of have a discussion and let staff sort of respond.
Thank you, Mr. Sable. I see lights going on. This is a really important discussion for our city. It seems that we have been talking about this for quite some time. I go back to, I think, one of the first times we were talking about this. It was after the survey that we had done last year, I want to say. It was a survey, and we learned that a majority of our community members view the community center as a true asset in Maplewood. And so I was really pleased with the work that the council did, the work that our staff did, coming up with the idea that because this is viewed as a regional asset, my microphone's on. Can you hear me?
No.
Okay. Oh. Okay, it's back on. Can you hear me now?
No, it's not on.
Okay.
Oh, he
I
said
guess
yes.
It's not working, so. Two microphones, wow. Okay, how's that? I bet that's better. Anyway, I thought that we had come up with a really creative idea that would help fund the needed repairs and actually the big update of the community center. It's, I think, at least a 40-year-old building that is, as many 40-year-old buildings, it's tired and it needs work. And I thought we had a really creative idea, council members. I want to thank you for that and thank our staff. Unfortunately, it was very disappointing that our legislature, it seemed that they left a lot on the table. They didn't get a lot of things done, which unfortunately negatively impacts us. And so, no, I feel like we're now back at retooling our plan on what we need to do in regards to our community center. And in looking at this, there are certainly some unknowns. We do know that we don't have $48 million in our general fund. Mr. Rube is shaking his head at me. Yes, that's right. We don't have $48 million, nor can we tax our way out of this. This is something that we cannot ask our residents and our businesses to pay for. And so that local option sales tax, to me, was just such a creative idea and a good way to do it. And the timing seemed so right. There had been previously a moratorium for cities seeking local option sales taxes. That was removed, and as soon as it was, we were in that first group. And unfortunately, there were, I think, 36 other cities that were going for local option sales taxes and didn't get them either. So now we're back in this position of what do we do with our community center? And given the fact that our community sees it as such a wonderful asset, an important asset, I'm just going to jump out and indicate that I favor the short-term interim operation of the facility, number 2, I guess it is, where what we're trying to do is keep things moving forward until we can have that opportunity to go back to the legislature. I talked with Mike Sable today about this, about the timing, and our agreement with the Y to run the community center goes through April of 2027. The council could, if they desired, to go back to the legislature and seek that local option sales tax. We could do that again next January. And if we didn't get it next January because the legislature, again, doesn't address this opportunity, for us and a lot of other cities, we could then go back again in 2028. In the meantime, we're going to have to do some repairs. We're going to have to address the water problem. We're going to have to address the safety issues that are developing as we're trying to figure out ways to fund this. And ultimately, if the legislature is not going to be supportive of a local option sales tax, absent some other creative way of funding what our community center needs, council members, we may be talking about a different alternative, maybe alternative 3 or alternative 4. But I think that, sometimes with the legislature, it takes more than one go-around to try to effectuate the kind of legislation that we really need for our community. I certainly don't want to support option number 1, which is to sink in a lot of money into our community center, because we've talked about this before, then we just wind up with the same kind of building without anything that is any more, that isn't, it's just not visionary. It's the same building, but it just has updated operating systems. And so that's kind of the way I see this. I'd like to hear from other council members as well. I think everybody's light was on. Councilmember Cave, you were first, or was it Council?
Cave, then Phillips.
Okay, we'll do this in order. Councilmember Cave.
Sure, thank you. I would agree that this council really came together and, with staff and put together a really creative idea with the local option sales tax. I'll reiterate, I think it's really unfortunate that that didn't go through. I'll just speed up a little bit, though. I don't see us doing it next year because that would require a special election. And there's no elections next year, so that would be the only thing on the ballot, would it not?
That's the thing I talked to Mr. Sable about today. We could go to the legislature and ask them. They have to be the first ones that give us the approval to take it to the residents. We would wait, my suggestion, rather than do a special election, which is, at least $45,000 to do a special election. I don't see that. We could hold off doing the special election until 2028, when there is a regular election.
Okay.
But we would at least then have 2 chances to go to the legislature, in 2027 and then 2028. But my thought is we would hold off and have it go to a ballot of our residents only until 2028. I don't envision a special election for this.
And that's a possibility. I don't like, option 1. I believe option 2 is, it's viable, but there's so much, I don't think a Band-Aid fixes a Maplewood Community Center anymore. More investment needs to be done than just fixing the emergency stuff if people are really going to go there and keep using it. So I don't want to spend a lot of money. I don't know how much money we're talking about in number 2, but that, I feel like we would be giving a disservice to the people of Maplewood, Oakdale, North St. Paul who use our Maplewood Community Center. I feel like we would be setting them up in a dangerous place. I personally felt if the levy was going to go through, that would be an excellent source to, ask the Maplewood citizens what they thought of it, if that's what they want, if that's what they wanted our local tax to go for. We don't have that opportunity right now, and for 2 years paying for something that we know is very, very damaged, I just think it's a high risk at that place to just do a few things. So I'm really teetering on the fact that we need to have a serious, not just tonight, but we need to figure out if this is something that we even continue, that building shouldn't exist anymore. I feel like it's just not safe.
Are you at that point right now?
I am.
Okay.
I am, because I don't see in 2 years minimum we're talking about, okay? And then if let's say the levy does go through or doesn't.
Local option sales tax, not a levy.
I
We're not
mean
gonna
local
levy.
option
Yeah.
sales tax.
Yeah.
Then there's more time after that. And what if, then what if it doesn't pass? And in 2 years, it's looking like a dilapidated house. And in 2 years, with all those people using it and the small amount that we're going to fix, I don't feel like it's going to be a safe place, personally. I don't think we can get it to that point. That's why really everyone agreed that we need a new building. So to me, what my heart tells me is, for safety reasons, we shouldn't continue this building as it is. We should look at closing it down and continue the sales option tax, but for building a new one. And that way, people can decide if they want it built there. Maybe we want to redevelop that whole section because it's such a great bus line. It's such a great area that maybe that's not where we put the next community center. We asked South Maplewood and North Maplewood together to come up with a location. I don't want to put more money into this when it's really, everybody knows it's not a safe place. So that being said, I mean, I do want number 3 would probably be first. I would look at number 2, but not, no, you know what, I'll look at it if that's what the council wants, but I just see as it not really, unfortunately, it just didn't work this time. It doesn't mean we can't do the levy, but not for this building.
Thank
If
you for
that's
that.
what- yeah.
Mr. Sable, I'm going to ask, because I think that that's an important, you made a statement about the building not being safe. And I think we need to hear from Mr. Love and from Mr. Sable, because we certainly would not want to be managing a building that's not safe. So let's, Mr. Sable and then Mr. Love, can you address the issue about, is the community center a safe place?
Sure. Thanks, Mayor and council members. So the facility condition assessment report that we had conducted identified a number of life safety elements that needed to be fixed. Those were some things that were within the systems themselves that were identified as a problem. And those are, there is a pot of money that, so as you know, we have an agreement with the Y that we contribute some capital replacement dollars. And so there is, the city is on the hook for some of those repairs. I think the larger life safety issue really has to do with making sure that there's not water intrusion in the building. That is the most obvious one. It's the piece that destroyed the gym floor. It continues to be a source of water intrusion. And so from that standpoint, the building is not unsafe for human use, but it is not anywhere near its full potential. It has water. If it rains really hard, water gets on the floor, and that water leaks into the gym floor, and then it warps the floor, and then you have to replace the floor. Not to simplify it, but it's, if you remember the book, like you give a mouse a cookie, like a little bit of water damages the floor, and not only do you have to prevent the water from coming in, now you have to fix the floor, and then you have to move all of the equipment. And so sometimes there can be increases in costs that you don't anticipate. But so I will say the building is safe to use. However, it's just not an ideal condition right now. And so the real question, and this is why this is a hard question, is what is the appropriate amount of investment in something that might be going away in 2 years or 3 years? And that is an unpleasant conversation. There's no good answer to that question, but it's the question that you're forced to wrestle with. Like, I've heard clearly from the city council that 20 million is too much, and no one is interested in 20 million. What we haven't wrestled out, is there some number that does feel like an acceptable number, and we will, as staff, kind of wrestle through that. But it's good to know where the council rests on this issue. Pardon my language.
Love, do you want to, you were there on the tour with us, and yes, the water problem is one of the biggest issues, the most immediate issues.
Yes, Mayor and Council. So I think City Manager Sable summed it up very well. You know, one of the biggest issues is the water intrusion when it rains. There were a number of safety items that we'd met with the YMCA staff and had addressed that were identified as well. So,
Thank you for that. You know, one of the things too, and in my notes here I circled April 2027. We still have an agreement with the Y through April of 2027. And we have, part of that is, as Mike said, an obligation for some capital improvements, which fixing this water issue would qualify for that requirement under the lease. Is that a correct understanding, Mr. Sable?
Mayor and council members, that's correct.
Okay, so
But then can I
minimally,
comment?
just one second. Minimally, we are there until April of 2027. That's our agreement. You know, this is a huge issue, and one of the things that I want to throw out there too is that we have talked about this as a council. We've had the survey. Mr. Sable, can you kind of run through for us we have been talking about this for a very long time, and it's unfortunate that we didn't get what we needed to from the legislature. That's the disappointing part, so we're having to revisit it. But we have certainly been talking about it and engaging our residents. We're going to need to do more of that to help us figure out what really is next. I looked at number 2 because of that April 2027 date. We're not going to, I would never recommend breaking that agreement. That's something that, you know, we're committed until April 2027. So, Mr. Sable, can you kind of go through what we have done in terms of all of the discussions about this?
Certainly, Mayor and council members. I think the starting point for the conversation was the tour of the building itself, where we walked through, because we knew as staff that we had seen some building elements that were in decline, you know, a cracked window here. We know that the steel support beams over the awning are rusted out. Even if you drive by, you can notice that along the stair railing, you'll see that there's a rust line that's dripping down the concrete, so that's an indicator of decay. And so we had a professional engineering firm go through and look at all of the components that were potentially broken, and there are 37 things that they have identified that need to be repaired over the next 10 years. And so some of them very small, 15,000, 5,000. Some of them are, you know, $3.5 to $4.5 million in terms of total repairs. So it runs the full gamut. From that meeting, from the tour, we had a conversation with the YMCA, because we knew at that point the YMCA lease was expiring. And so we said, well, could you extend this lease and buy us some time to do some analysis? The Y agreed to that. We did some analysis, and I think we had a conversation where we talked about the facility condition assessment report. We talked about the actual lease terms. We've talked about the real estate appraisal piece. It's also been part of the legislative agenda, so we've talked about the legislative agenda a handful of times. I think before I will speculate and guess that I think we've had a conversation about this building in this room 7 times since the tour. And so it is something that we talk about regularly. It's been in the Maplewood Living. There was a number of open houses with participants from the MCC YMCA. We had the online survey that was made available. And so we've made an effort to do engagement and outreach. In fact, we actually had and we have available a website with kind of chronicling all that we've done and all of the data. I'll just note that the city competes for people's attention all the time, and we don't often win because people opt to do other things than watch council meetings. And so I will say that the Maplewood Living that's going to be hitting mailboxes in 2 weeks or a week and a half or so will include a 2-page section about these projects and what it means. And so we're trying to do some intentional engagement and outreach, but it is complicated and messy. But this is one of these thorny issues that there's no good answer, but we do, as I say often, we do need an answer, kind of what would you like us to do next? And so that's why these discussion items are fun.
And one other question, just can you comment about that April 2027 deadline that, and our obligations through April 2027?
Certainly, Mayor and council members, the lease that we have with the Y requires the city to put forward a set amount of money for capital repairs of the building. Loose terms, it's about $225,000 annually. It might be $220,000, but that is the general range. And what we do is we jointly agree with the YMCA that here's where we're going to put some capital investments in that facility. I will note that in 2025, we used a portion of that $225,000 payment to pay for the LSE architecture work of designing the new facility. So the Y partnership, while they don't provide any rent payment to the city, has been they've been understanding and have done appropriate give and take in the partnership. And so we are committed for this year to pay that, and then I don't know the lease terms precisely, but I would imagine they would expect a pro rata share from January through April of that 225. So you could estimate that it would be 1/4 of that, which is, $60-ish thousand that we would owe them. So if you round up, it's probably around, we would owe the Y $280,000. And Mr. Rube will correct me with the precise number later.
Thank you for that. If we spent 7 council meetings talking about the Maplewood Community Center, I envision that we're going to have many more than 7 between now and the end of this year about what's going to be the best answer for our community. And bottom line is, we have to listen and see what our community has to say. I'm very glad and encouraged that we've got something going out in Maplewood Living this next edition. Councilmember Villavicencio, your thoughts?
Yes, so looking over these options, obviously I was extremely disappointed as well. And I think we all know that the community center is really important, not to just Maplewood residents, but to people in the region. And so, I really feel that number 2 is the option that we should go for. I understand that it can be looked at as a Band-Aid issue, but I think it is worthwhile to go back up to the legislature and ask for the sales tax again. In my experience in passing laws there, it usually takes more than 1 year to get anything done there. So, and that was in good years. So I really think that, also while we're doing those things, even though that, we've talked about it a lot, and I can remember even before being on the council, when the Y and the community center first started their relationship together. And, so it has been a really give and take between both entities. And I think we need to have more conversations with our residents, because even though we and the city staff has done a really good job about outreach, I think, anything I've learned about it, we need to over-communicate always. And really, go back and kind of do a history lesson of where we were, where the community center has been up until now. Because I think, a lot of residents care about it, but they're missing all the pages in between in the book. So I think if we kind of peel all those pages back and then have that really good conversation with some really good residents and stakeholders and see what we all can come up with.
Thank you for that. I think I like that analogy about the book. Yeah, that's good. Councilmember Juniman, your thoughts?
Ditto. Option 2 seems like the most logical. There's a piece of me that says, yeah, that's like paying rent for an apartment that you don't live in. But we don't have much option, thanks to the legislature. You did that very well, by the way, saying they concluded their business, not they finished their business. There's a big difference. Well, it's true. But I think from what we know from the engagement so far and what we know from the why, there is a desire for this to be there. So operating from that premise now, we have no option but to do something, and none of it's right because our options were narrowed by a group of people who don't do their work. But that leaves us only, I think, with option 2, the short-term interim operation of the facility. And I'm not as worried about as you are about the safety because of what it says, focusing on the most critical operational and safety-related repairs. Mm-hmm. So I rely on staff to make that come true In other words, what's really safety related and what's cosmetic and so on. But I think we do have to let people know, I agree with Nikki, the pages that are missing, they need to get caught up on. Because it's their decision as much as ours, although we're in the position of making the decision at the last time, at the moment. It is their decision if they want to participate in the decision. And so we need to provide more options for that. But I don't think we have any alternative but to do what needs doing desperately to keep it open. It would be simpler to demolish it and put a new one somewhere else, but it would also be very expensive, and you will lose, if you close down, I think you will lose a lot of the impetus. And people won't necessarily go elsewhere, but they'll just have nowhere to go. And so we have to think about that piece. And there's a lesson in all this, gruesome as it may be. When this building was built, there should have been a spot in the budget for keeping it up to date, and it wasn't. So we need to take a lesson from that and make sure that all of our buildings are kept up to par, because you don't want any other building to be in this position. But we're here, so we have to do something to, in my estimation, to keep it open and safe to use. And then we try again in '27 to see if these people are any more serious about their jobs than they were this year. And see if they will, I mean, the fact that they responded to none of the cities, that says to me they just shoved it aside and didn't think about it. So we weren't very important. So I guess we need to make ourselves more important. I volunteer.
Mr. Sable.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Thank you for the discussion, number one. This is not an ideal scenario. We had other plans, and so we did have to kind of improvise. At the staff level, we have the facility condition assessment report that has some rough order of magnitude numbers of what things could cost. I think I have heard loudly and clearly that the full amount is not anything you're interested in, and so doing sort of, I don't want to use the word Band-Aid, but doing the smallest amount possible to make it a viable building to make it last a couple more years seems to be the consensus of the council. So as a staff, we will put forward an estimate of what minimum number of repairs would be. We will also identify, excuse me, some potential sources of revenue that could be used, whether it's existing pre-programmed capital contributions or some other sources of money that we could make available, and we will bring those kind of forward. I will forecast, we do have a meeting with the YMCA staff tomorrow to talk about the end of the legislative session and what that looks like, and so we will certainly learn more about what their intent is. We will redouble our efforts on engagement, and so I do like that idea of I was going to say encyclopedia, but some sort of, chronology of how we got to this point. I think we can, as staff, we can clearly do that. And I think the only other piece that's out there is thinking through if we do go to the legislative session in 2027, the lease agreement would expire before that session would end, and so there will have to be some sort of lease amendment that would have to take place between now and then. It will be an entirely new legislature because they also have elections this year. And I'll also throw out that there is a potential to be an entirely new council in 2027. Well, not entirely new, but there could be new members on the city council. And so we will do the best work that we can to provide this governing body with a plan going forward. Just know that the players may change, and so that may change the discussion next year. The last thing I'll say is if the legislature grants the city the authority and the city chooses to hold an election on the general election in 2028, we might not know the answer until November of 2028, and the money wouldn't arrive until April of 2029. And so this is actually a 3-year conversation, not just a 2-year conversation. And so I'm sensitive to that, and I just want to make sure that you're aware that this is at a minimum, a 3-year conversation.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Cave.
Just a comment to, I appreciate the transparency with the why, and I know we have a lease with them, but there's also the opportunity for them to see that this isn't something they want to go forward with also. So we need to keep that up front. It's not us breaking a lease, but maybe it works in both favors because they see it not going somewhere. Also, can we have a cap on spending with option 2? I know all the amounts that were recorded for the floor and everything, they've obviously gone up in 6 months, but I would like a cap on our spending for over there. So we're not just throwing, money at it because it's where it's at. So I would like to see us have some type of cap on that.
I think, at least the way I envision it, is that staff will bring back to us what it would take to address the water issue and any other absolutely immediate necessity over there before there are any expenditures at all. And at that time, we can talk about not to exceed amounts, but right now, we don't have the, this is our first discussion post-legislative session on what do we need to do next? What are those next steps? So I certainly appreciate the discussion.
And-
This is an important topic.
And also so the why understands too, not just council, that it's 3 years.
Right, that's important.
That is.
Mr. Sable, anything else you want to add?
Thank you for the discussion.
Okay. All right, moving on, we have one item of new business, a commitment to volunteerism proclamation. Mr. Sable, this is your topic.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. This is an outgrowth of a conversation that this body had several weeks ago about using and encouraging people in the community to volunteer and give back to the community and give back to some of the nonprofit organizations. And so this is really kind of an opportunity for the city of Maplewood to partner with Just Serve, which is a app-based volunteer platform that nonprofits can register and say, hey, we need a dozen volunteers to do buckthorn removal, and the community can access that information, and that's an example, but it's really an obvious example. And so there are a number of communities in the region who do this, who partner with Just Serve to get and promote and encourage volunteerism in the community. This is really an outgrowth of 3 conversations. Number one, the post Operation Metro Surge listening session that said people just want an opportunity to get back, but they don't know where to start. This isn't a place for them to start. It's also an outgrowth from our nonprofit resource expo that we just held recently. And then lastly, this is just one of these things that it's a streamlined way for people in the community they can also identify things that they want to do. And so it's really the city being a good partner and pairing volunteers and people seeking volunteers and bringing them together. And so one of the requirements to get the app is to just say that this is a proclamation of a commitment to volunteerism and that the city of Maplewood commits to promoting volunteerism, leveraging justserve.org to make it easier for residents to find and engage in volunteer opportunities, and will regularly acknowledge and celebrate the contributions of volunteers. And so this was a no-cost way for us to connect residents with nonprofit partners.
Thank you for that. Any questions for Mr. Sable? Then would someone like to make that motion?
I move to adopt the commitment to volunteerism proclamation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Ginnivan, seconded by Villavicencio. The motion to adopt the commitment to volunteerism proclamation. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. I'm looking forward to seeing that on our website, our newly revamped website, so that we can be connecting our residents with nonprofits. It has been amazing to see the kind of volunteerism from our community, and I'm not surprised by it. It's very heartwarming, and this just gives an avenue to connect people with opportunities. So I'm very happy that we were able to do that. We are done with the agenda for tonight. Thank you, council members, and with that, we are adjourned.